participate, how to please you, Lord. And so, Lord, as we go into this lesson, we are asking that you be with us this evening, that you teach the lesson, Lord, on behalf. That all I have to do is kind of show the slides, and we just ask that you just take my voice and provide for your people what they need.
Yes.
We understand that there's so much that we can learn from the Old Testament, so much we can learn from the prophets, because they not only spoke to the people of that day, but they spoke to us also.
Yes.
And so, Lord, we want to make sure that we are attentive, and that we're open, and that we're willing to share our opinions. So, Lord, we just ask you to work in this lesson tonight, so that your will be done as a result. We love you, and we send this prayer to you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so tonight we're going to go into the book of Daniel, and it's a familiar story. Most of us are familiar with the story of Daniel and the three Hebrew boys. And there have been songs written about it, and many sermons preached about it. So tonight we're going to kind of cover it from a little bit different angle than I've heard sung about and preached before. But we are going to go through this and see what God has for us. First of all, a question. How many of you have spent some significant time in another country, in a foreign country? Yeah. But what did you find that was kind of challenging about it?
The language, the poverty, just being very different from the norm.
Pretty much about the same. Just the culture, just definitely a culture shock. Like Zach said, definitely a poverty level there. Definitely the languages. It's definitely a big factor.
Sister Jackie, I believe you raised your hand. Yes. And so, did you find then that when you attempted to do the things you normally do, or had something to say, that you're always a little hesitant that what I say might mean something different to them, or what I do might be interpreted different?
Absolutely.
Because I don't want to offend anybody in their own country?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is kind of what we see in Daniel to some extent. So as we go through, we'll see that there's a lesson to be learned for how Daniel handled his situation of being a citizen of one country living in another country. And if you think about that, you know, it fits where we are today to some extent. Now, we have somewhat of a dual citizenship. We can participate in the same thing as any American because we have American citizenship. Okay, but that's not our final kingdom. We also citizens of the kingdom of heaven. And sometimes those two conflict. And when they do, it puts us in very uncomfortable situations, which we'll see happen here with Daniel. I think the difference with Daniel was he was a servant. He was not a citizen, even though God blessed him to get some privileges that most servants didn't get. So we'll go ahead on and get into the lesson. Remember how to push button push. That was it. So, about Daniel. Daniel's name means God is my judge. He was a young man of noble blood who was exiled from Judah during the time of King Jehoiakim. That was about 609. 659. Well, that was a long time. What typo there? And he lived thereafter in the Babylonian court. Up until now, the prophets we've studied have been prophesying prior to the exile of Israel to Assyria and Judah to Babylon. The message of the prophets usually included a call to the people to repent so that they would not face exile. For Daniel, it was too late for that. This time, they were already in exile. book of Daniel, the two halves are different, but together they show God's people how to live as strangers in exile in a world that is not their home, and to assure them that God is in control and that his kingdom will ultimately prevail over the kingdoms of the world. Just a little setting here. We see that Jerusalem and Damascus or Syria, these are the areas that that the Israelites were in. Daniel came from Jerusalem, and he was actually imprisoned in Babylon. Okay. So, let's get into our scripture. Chapter 1, verse 1. And like I always do, I'll ask you guys to read.
In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with some of the vessels of the house of God. And he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and placed the vessels in the treasury of his God.
Okay, so we see here, this is showing us in the beginning how Daniel ended up in exile in Babylon, because they were attacked by the king of Judah. They were attacked by Nebuchadnezzar and his group, and was taken to Babylon. So the king of Babylon had attacked the city of Jerusalem and won. The powers of the world appear to have defeated the glory of God, but then we read this was not due to military might, but to something that God did. You notice that in the scripture. It said the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hands. So this was something that God did, and not so much something that the enemy did, which is, a lesson to us, because every time we come under attack, we like to say that enemy, that devil, that, plenty of times God has allowed it. I mean, well, all the time God allows it to happen, because he can prevent it if he chooses to.
Right.
Sometimes it's a result of something we did or did not do, and sometimes it's a result of him needing to move us to a place where he can use us. We tend to be people, I know I am, I can get comfortable. You let life go good, and I can be comfortable with things. So God have to kind of make some discomfort so I can move. The Babylonians had violated the temple of God and had taken away many of the treasured vessels and placed them in the house of God of King Nebuchadnezzar. If you were a citizen of Jerusalem who trusted in the holy God, what would you find troubling about what is revealed in verses 1 and 2? What do you think about that? I mean, as you're a citizen of Israel, this attack happened, and you find out that God did it. How would that seem? Because before you know that God did it, it does seem like if we are the chosen ones, and we've just been taken by these heathens, as they say.
They had to feel like they must have fallen from grace.
But didn't they get fair warning?
Yeah.
Several times.
Bunch of the times. Yeah. Yeah, like we do today. But we've got time.
And I mean, you also think too that they're often always looking to the temple, right, as kind of the source of their identity. That's where God resides. And now God has allowed even some of the vessels from the temple to be taken. So imagine they're shocked too. Now the vessels turned over to some false idol, some false god. It's been taken. So yeah, I can imagine a sense of, oh my goodness, right? This is true now. This is really happening. We've been besieged, and even they've taken stuff out of God's house to take into their house.
So if we think back about some of the previous lessons, when the prophets were telling the people, you need to change your ways, and or some things bad are going to happen, God's going to raid the country and whatever, and then the other leaders are saying, we are God chosen, he wouldn't do that to us. So I'm sure there was many people who were feeling misled as a result of that. And there were many who probably questioned God. They believe, their whole belief system probably fell apart. It's like, well, maybe we weren't, his children.
But you know, it's also, this proves that God is faithful to his word too. I mean, he told them this was gonna happen, right? And they didn't repent, this was gonna happen. So, you know, another way they should look at it too is to say, well, God said it, you know, so, you know, yeah, he said it, so it came to pass too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
versus, you're right, but so often we wanna hear what's comfortable to us. So instead of listening to the right prophets, you listen to the false ones that said, peace, peace. And he's like, no, there is not going to be a peace. And so instead of saying, you know, those false prophets were wrong, oftentimes we think God is wrong, but God wasn't wrong. And so we blame God instead of actually blaming the false. And that happens even today.
Yeah.
So if we got false prophets promising wealth, health, and you'll get healed, and when it doesn't happen, instead of going, man, that guy must have been a false prophet. God didn't do this for me. You know, the preacher said it was supposed to be. And so we got to remind that God keeps his word, and we need to know his word and not always believe someone who's just tickling our ears.
That's why it's so important we know and trust in his word. God is not like that parent that says, okay, when I get home, I'm going to punish you for acting up in public today.
Right.
And get home and forget
They
it.
forget, right? You hope they forget, yes.
Those exist.
Those exist.
I've had that happen a few times, and then you get you right to happen when you feel that
You
nothing's gonna
rejoice.
happen.
Right. Oh, that's what they get you.
I got away on the last two, but this time, just when you think you got away. Verse, this is still in chapter 1, verse 3 and 4. So I'm going to read that.
And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and the king's seed, and the princes, children of whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding, science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans.
Okay. Can you see what's going on here? You get an idea of what the king is trying to do? When I was studying African American history, there was I can't remember the name of it right now, but there was a letter written by a man by the last name Lynch.
Willie Lynch.
Yeah, and it was written to all of these slave owners. And it had historical instructions on how to control slaves. Everything from splitting up families to creating friction between the light skins and the dark skins, and
The workers and the housework.
yeah, and the older ones against the younger ones, and so what he's done here is he's come up with a scheme to how he can control these servants, because what he wants those that were of noble means, those who were smart, and those who had wisdom and educated, and he wanted to get them set aside so he can prepare them to become Babylonians and not get any resistance from them, because if he can get them, they're the smartest of the bunch, then they would be examples for everybody else. So he was making a case for trying to assimilate them into Babylonian culture.
Which goes for the case of changing their names too.
Yeah.
So, he got the younger ones because he knew a younger man is easier to mold than an older set in their ways.
Yeah, that was the plan. So the king of Babylon sent his men into the homes of Jerusalem to round up the best and the brightest young men, young enough, he hoped, not to be so set in their ways of Jerusalem that they would resist the ways of Babylon. Among the young sons of Jerusalem taken into exile was Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, who was given names associated with Babylonian gods: Belteshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so when we hear those names, the stories are always about those names. Those were Babylonian names that was given to them.
Yeah.
Because not only did he want to control them, he wanted their identity to change. And so in the culture back in those days, your name had a meaning. you know, and most of the name that Israel named their children had some religious meaning to it. And so if you take that away and give them a new name, you know, so he's working on trying to assimilate them. Among the young sons of Jerusalem, since their names were statements of their faith, they had to be replaced by names related to Babylonian deities. Now, I didn't go and study and find out what all these names meant, Babylonian names, but they were named after those false gods of Babylonia. So not only did you take away your religious name, you give them the name of, you know, that's influenced by the false gods. So they were working really hard to get these guys assimilated. So it comes to question, how does a person live in Babylon as a citizen of Jerusalem? This is not just a question of concern of the people in that time, but also for us. I didn't have the scripture, but can somebody quickly read Hebrews chapter 11, 13 and 16? Let's just take a quick look at that.
Hebrews 11, 13, 16, these all died in faith, not having received the things promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar, and having not acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. For people who speak thus makes it clear that they are seeking a homeland. If they have been thinking of that land from which they had gone out, they would have had opportunities to return. But as it is, they desire a better country that is a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared for them a city.
Okay, can you see the similarities there with what we are going through? You know, I mean, there was a physical earning for their own land. God provided it for them. They disobeyed. They were exiled. Then they had that yearning again for land. In our time, we have a yearning for heaven. And as you go through that, they were really themselves, yearning for that, because the land was not going to give them what they were looking for. Okay, it was a place to be, a place of your own, but it wasn't that kingdom that was going to last forever. They would get that land back, and a few years later, another king would take over. So there was going to be, this over and over and over again thing that happened. But what they were really yearning for was that kingdom that was going to last forever. So to live wisely in the kingdom of the world as a citizen of the kingdom of God, this is what you must know. You must know who you really are. We see one of the first things he wanted to do was change their identities and start teaching them, Babylonian culture. The kingdom of the world attempts to dictate your identity and demand conformance. Do we see that happening in our day?
Yes.
Yeah. You must know what will last. The human power and rule can be impressive for a time and do good things up to a point, but they're never permanent. We have history that proves that, right? We have all these ancient, what do you call them, times when Rome was the big one, and then, Egypt, and then all these countries was the rulers of the time. And I guess in our day and time, we kind of see the United States as that country with the great power that, that can influence the world. Let's just put it that way. Many of them in the old days wanted to rule the world, but the U.S. wants to influence the world, and so we see that playing out in our day. You must know whom to depend on. The kings of the world do not have ultimate power. Only God has that. And when necessary, he set limits on the power of the world. And we've seen that happen throughout the biblical times. Okay? So when it looks like the world is winning, we have to always understand that we can't depend on the world. We have to depend on God. Okay? You must know who lived that way. The king of heaven was sent into exile in this world and set a pattern for us. So we see that Jesus himself, a citizen of heaven, came to earth and lived, and he left us an example of how we can live in earth. Okay? You must know how the story will end. That's important. The kingdom of the world will become the kingdom of our Lord and his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. So regardless of what it looks like now, regardless of what we're going through now, you know, we always have the view of how the story will end. And so, you know, it just kind of surprised me that all these Christians went berserk when Trump won the presidency. You know, I mean, I can see people getting upset, but a lot of these Christian people were, you know, acting as if the world was getting ready to end. And it was like, whoa, 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 where's your faith? Who do you have faith in? You know, the kingdoms of the world change all the time, you know, and it'll change again. So, you know, you just can't let that be your driver. And I always, you know, kind of always felt like that sometimes the church has gotten too involved in world politics. Because, you know, I really think if you spend too many resources being involved in politics, you don't have the resources to do what God called the church to do. Okay? It's not to say we don't participate, because we are citizens, and citizens should participate, you know, but it should not be the driver for us. We should understand that when things don't go our way in the political world, we still got God to depend on. And we know that whatever goes on there will last. So let's just look at these. You must know who you really are. Get somebody to read Daniel chapter 1, verse 5.
And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king.
So the idea was to feed them, back them up, educate them, get them nice and comfortable, and then bring them before the king at the end of 3 years. And the king would do an assessment on, you know, how well they did. So Nebuchadnezzar sought to assimilate the exiles into Babylon culture by destroying their religious and cultural identity and creating a dependence on the royal court. So if he was the one feeding you, then you are depending on him for food. Babylon was not only intended to educate them in the best school in the world. At that time, Babylon was the class of the world. They had the best schools. It intended to wine and dine them in the finest restaurants in the world, the same place that the king ate every day. So, you know, you get to eat with the king every day. That's pretty cool, right? You feel pretty special. Would you feel like a servant as much if you got a chance to eat at the king's table every day?
Not as much.
Not as much. Yeah. And you can see your fellow servants out in the fields and doing all these things, but you've been given this privilege. Can you see how that would drive a wedge between you and your fellow citizens? And when you can drive a wedge between a unit, you can control it. And so that's what was going on here. So what teenager do you know that would say no to that? The stories and the visions in this book of Daniel reveal to us how we are to live wisely in the kingdom of the world as citizens of the kingdom of God. And verse 8 says, but Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine that he drank. Therefore he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. And that was Daniel 1 and 8. And somebody can read 1 and 12 and 13 for us.
Please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see.
Okay, so we see the wisdom of Daniel coming out, right? So he cut a deal. And knowing, you know, that he had God on his side, you know, and the eunuch's issue was you know, Daniel had already gained favor with the eunuch. His issue was if they didn't feed him properly and they start to lose weight, the king is going to get upset, you know, because they're malnutrition. You know, he's investing all this in these guys, and you're going to let them starve to death. So, you know, that wouldn't look good for the eunuch, and the chief eunuch would probably not be the chief eunuch for very long.
It's a lot of similarity to that, to our world today, because that's how the world dictates what we as believers truly understand as living a godly life, right? I mean, here the claim is that if you eat the king's food, you're going to be healthy and strong. And telling Daniel and his brothers, if you eat vegetables, there's no way you can be strong as eating the king's food. And it's similar to what the world is telling us, like the world, like dictates what success looks like.
Right,
you know,
right.
It's a physical appeal. He tries to like enslave the believer in this ideology that success is material accumulation, accumulation of material stuff. So this is what success is. So if you don't have this, you're not really successful. And that's the claim that the world is making. And I think that's really how one of the ways in which the world tries to transform our mindset, so that we're not really focused on what it means to have true success in Christ.
Yeah, and that's something that's hard for a human to deal with. You know, we don't see any loyalty in being a servant. You know, there's nothing nice about being a slave. You know? I mean, if you're going to make it in this world, you got to own the slave. You can't be one. You know? And so, you know, when you have that mindset, and the world does dictate to you what success is, you know? If you don't have a job and a wife and a home and 3 or 4 kids, and, you know, you can send them off to college, and, you know, you haven't been successful. And what happened is that people break their backs trying to meet that, you know, and bring a lot of the suffering on themselves because they're working so hard trying to be successful, when if we just listen to the Word of God and really understand that true success is making it to heaven. You could be poor all your life, you know, never own anything, die and go to heaven, you've been successful.
Lazarus.
Yeah. And you can have wealth,
That's right.
and die and go to hell, and you lost it all. So,
I mean, I like that, you know, this is all under knowing who you really are. Because again, you know, if you've dragged me out of my home country in exile, this would be very tempting, you know, which we get the phrase like when in Rome, you know, right? So he's like, when in Babylon, I'm just going to eat the king's food. But, you know, Daniel was like, I don't want to defile myself, because he remembered God's law, right? God's kosher laws. And so not to eat all this what the Gentiles are eating. So, you know, that's amazing, just a faithfulness commitment for Daniel to stick with who who he is, and not give in to the temptation of saying, well, I'm here. Who's going to know? We're all here. This is what we, you know. And he was very respectful even in asking to do this, right? He respected the authority that he was under, and, you know, he asked, hey, can I do, and God showed him favor by granting that to happen.
So God gave Daniel favor, as Pastor said, and in the sight of the chief eunuch. So when the eunuch became concerned about consequences he would face if any of exile under his care suffered from malnutrition, Daniel asked and was granted a test. Every day when everybody else lined up for the lavish buffet and stood their forks in the filet, Daniel and his friends ate at the salad bar. They were evidently willing to learn the language. They didn't, you know, buck that. Read the literature and receive the education, but it is not known why they drew the line here in regards to the food. And Pastor mentioned one possibility was because there was no law against them learning, but there was a law against certain foods that they ate. And if you went to the king's table and you didn't know where the food come from, you had no way of knowing. You know, this food might have been as a result of something that was sacrificed to some of those false gods. I mean, you wouldn't know. And so they drew the line there. Perhaps Daniel needed to set up for himself a daily reminder that Babylon was not his home and that he belongs to another kingdom and another king. verse 14, Daniel 1, 14 through 16. Can I get a reader?
So he listened to them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. At the end of 10 days, it was seen that they were better in appearance and fatter in flesh than all the youth who ate the king's food. So the steward took away their food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables.
See, I see that as a miracle.
Yeah, yeah.
Because somehow in my head, I got it convinced that I can't live without meat.
You can't do that today.
I was like, right. You see all these vegetarians and you just wonder how they do it, you know? It's like, oh man, I think I don't know.
Tofu.
It may be more than just hunger, you know? Anyway, yeah, I looked at that and I thought, and they were fatter?
Yeah,
And they were
fatter,
healthier.
yeah.
You know, we see God working in that, because in my mind, you know, I've got this obsession with meat. And I would have had, what they call it, DTs? Why do you get yeah, withdrawal syndrome, yeah. God blessed Daniel and his three friends, giving them learning and skill in all literature and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams.
Daniel was under the chief eunuch?
Mm-hmm.
Was Daniel made a eunuch?
Nope.
But when, in the beginning, when you put up that Nebuchadnezzar had gathered the best mind of all the young men
Mm-hmm.
and made them eunuchs.
Oh, no, if it said that, it wasn't supposed to.
No, you didn't say that.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to understand.
Oh, no, okay.
If the eunuchs were separate from these young men, who he was.
The eunuchs were put in charge. They were the people that were
Okay.
put in charge of the prisoners.
Okay.
I think other
Okay.
places in the Bible, you would see eunuchs, and I can't think of the other word for them, but sometimes they were put in charge of the women.
Yeah.
You know, because they didn't want to have somebody who would,
Right,
you know, so,
Safe.
yeah.
Right.
So these were special people who had special assignments, and he was put in charge of making sure that these young men were kept, well kept, healthy, and so that being his assignment, that's why he was concerned about them not being healthy and well kept.
Thank you.
At the end of their training, when they were brought before the king, they were found to be superior in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired. So at the end of the 3 years, when they were brought to the king, they were found to be better than the people who were, you know, who were Babylonians who went through the same process. So we see God continuing to bless them because they weren't natives; they were just learning this literature, and you know, but God gave them, you know, the minds to absorb and to understand what they were studying.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, yeah. And probably they had more will to do it too, because, you know, the pastor said many times, and I thought about this, and I think he's right. Christians ought to live in such a way that when an employer go out looking for employees, he go out looking for Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Because in his mind, he should think that I can depend on this Christian to do what they said they were going to do. If I sign the contract, he says he's going to be to work every day, at this time he's going to be there. I mean, that's how we should be seen in the world as Christians. And so, you know, I don't have any doubt in my mind that this was what they were doing in service to God. They committed to doing this in service to God.
And also think too that even Jeremiah, you know, back in Jeremiah 29, you know, the letter that was written to them said, "You get ready to go into exile, but here's what you do while you're there. You know, seek the welfare of the city. Right? You're living as exile, but you can live in such a way that you want to do your home, that place well, because if it does well, you will prosper and do well, even though you're in exile."
Right.
So, you know, I think they're taking that to heart, that I'm going to learn, right, at the same time, knowing that they're still citizens, not of Babylon, but I'm going to live in such a way, right, that I'll take advantage of education, all that,
Right.
but still keeping themselves from defiling, like they did in the case with the food, and we'll see later on. But, yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, that's true, because we see in other cases in the Bible, you know, where when they're in that situation, they are told, you know, to be good citizens of these countries.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you do that, then most of the time the country's gonna allow you to honor your worship, you know, honor your guidelines for worship and all that. If you're not creating a problem for them, you know, and they see what you're doing, you know, they're seeing they're being blessed as a result of your God. They're gonna let you continue to worship. Okay, so when you start agitating them, then that's when it comes to be a problem. They were found to be 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters that were in the kingdom. In Daniel chapter 2, we find that King Nebuchadnezzar had experienced a disconcerting dream and was desperate to know what it meant. So desperate that he threatened to kill all of his magicians and wise men if they did not describe and interpret the dream.
That's a tough day.
Did you get that? Right. He said, describe and interpret the dream.
Mm-hmm.
The king didn't mean to tell them what the dream was.
Right. You gotta tell me what it is.
You got to tell me what my dream was.
I'll make up something. I'll make up a meaning. I got you right.
Wrong.
And I don't know what mindset this king was in, because if you got all these magicians and enchanters and you still got them, they must be some benefit to you.
Yeah.
They must have done some things right over time because they're still there.
Right.
Now he's ready to kill them. He's going to take them all out. So Daniel, with the gift that had been given by God, was able to describe and interpret the king's dream. This is the description. So can somebody read that? That's chapter 2, verse 31 to 35. It's a little long, but this is the description of the king's dream.
You saw, O king, and behold, a great image. This image, mighty and of exceeding brightness, stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. The head of this image was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its middle and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. As you looked, a stone was cut out by no human hand, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, and broke them into pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold, all together were broken in pieces, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, so that not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth.
So what do you think that stone was? Christ. Yeah, so this king had a dream about Christ. Didn't know it, but and it troubled him. The other thing I saw in this last week when we were going through Isaiah, you remember the imagery in Isaiah's vision? You know, what he saw, the sword, and, you know, and it's interesting that we start out with similar kind of imagery, you know, brightness, that was frightening to, you know, to people who would have seen it. And so we see that this is, I mean, just looking at it, I didn't have a clue. I don't know about you guys what he was talking about, but I did get some indication that when he said the stone would become a great mountain, fill the whole earth, I got some indication there that he was talking about Christ. So, the interpretation of the dream. This is verse 44, chapter 2, verse 44 and 45. If I can get someone to read that.
And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all the kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what will come to pass after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation is sure.
Okay. So we see that the description was really talking about the stone, Christ, eliminating all the kingdoms of the world. And if you go back and look through history, you know, as we said before, there was a kingdom, and they ruled for a while, and they would do something stupid, but like, you know, bring a country in with a bunch of slaves and not pay attention to them, then they would get overtaken, and it doesn't, you know. So you see these kingdoms come and go and come and go. So what Daniel was trying to tell the king that yes, you know, this is you. You know, this kingdom, all this gold and stuff, this is you. But there's going to come a time when your kingdom is going to fall. Right. Okay? And another kingdom will spring up. But in the end of it, there's going to be one kingdom that lasts forever. So when we start thinking about the kingdoms that we live in, the things that's being built up, we should know that it's not going to last, regardless of what. Even if we have to go through suffering, even if things change so much, you know, until we lose stuff, we still know that it's not the end. That there is going to become a kingdom that's going to be ruled by Christ, that's going to last forever. And I thought it was interesting too that when you go to the New Testament, it talks about the stone that the builders rejected. You know, the same stone is the one that's going to set up the kingdom forever and rule forever. The same stone that's going to break down these other kingdoms. So we see that, you know, God's at work. God is revealing to Nebuchadnezzar, to Daniel, to us what will last. The final word of history lies with something radical, a rock not moved by human hands. The stone is going to put an end to Babylon and all successive powers and establish an eternal kingdom that will fill the whole earth. So we see it happen over and over again. We don't know when. You know, the U.S. may not be the last major world power. You know, we might get overtaken, and there's another world power. We don't know. But what we do know is that in the end, there's going to be a kingdom that lasts forever, and it's going to be ruled by the King of Kings. For Daniel to live as a citizen of Jerusalem and Babylon, he had to put his hope in this stone and the kingdom that will last forever. Now, it's interesting how, I don't know, I can't describe a time, but I know I've been through these times where things were going on around you and it just disturbed you, you know, just bothered you because you were looking at the things going on around you. But if you could take your focus off and look at reality, those things around you become less of a distraction. If you can focus, you know, it's with anything, if you can focus, you know, well, bowling is one. I used to be a pretty good bowler. I think I've reached my peak now. I'm starting to go downhill. But, you know, but when I was on, you know, when I was bowling real good, I was focused, the guy next to me in the lane could get up and move, and it wouldn't affect me. But when I'm not bowling good, 3 people down. And it's funny how that works, you know. If you could get focused on what you're doing, keep your mind on what you're trying to do, and you know, that little mark on the floor you're trying to get. If you can just focus on that, you do better because you don't even see the people over here. So I think life is that way. If we focus on our troubles and our struggles, life is hard. If we focus on the fact that we got a kingdom waiting on us, life is easier. Joy, we can have joy in the midst of the stuff because we know that we, you know, victory shall be man, as the old song says.
You know, Larry, it's interesting that that God would give this vision to this pagan king just so that Daniel could interpret it, right? So it's almost like a message not only to him that your kingdom is temporary, but also maybe a little just to tell Daniel, y'all hang on, like you said, hang on, right? There's a greater kingdom coming, even though you may not live to see it, right? Because you know, because these, like you said, these kingdoms last for a long time, and each of those kingdoms progressively were made by worse material, right? You had gold, then silver, then bronze, and legs of iron, feet, you know, and you know, iron and clay and stuff like that, right? And I have notes here that talks about the head was Babylon, then Media was the chest, and then Persia was the middle of the thigh, and then the legs were like Greece. And so each of those consequent kingdoms, right, were of less quality, right, until ultimately, of course, God's kingdom is going to come to rule forever. But yeah, that's it.
So, chapter 3, verse 1, King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits and its breadth 6 cubits. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Now, what's interesting about this is after the dream interpretation.
He was fulfilling the dream.
Yeah, he got what he wanted. He got the interpretation of the dream, and now he decides to build this image. Okay, and this image was of him. This was, this was him asserting himself as the king. Okay, so.
You think he saw himself as being that stone?
Oh, that's a good question. He might have misinterpreted the interpretation. I don't know. I don't know. That's a good point. But I think what we can tell was he didn't really get the message.
Yeah.
So yeah, he either thought it was just, just a dream, or.
When you look at the scripture in verse 38, it said that you are the head of gold. So he was very clear that he knew that he was that.
Right. He
was totally
the
That
interpretation.
somebody inferior, another kingdom, was going to rise up against him. So that probably got his pride going.
Yeah, that's true.
So the people were told that when they heard the music, they were to fall down and worship the golden image that the king had set up. Whoever did not fall down and worship would immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace. The music started, and a sea of people fell to the ground to worship the golden image. But among them stood 3 men, knowing full well that a fire was being stoked for all who refused to bow. Once you embrace God's revelation of all the world power is turning to dust and blown away by the wind, you're less impressed by a powerless image, even if it is made of gold. So we see that maybe the king didn't take it to heart, but we see that the Hebrew boys did take it to heart. They knew and understood, what that dream meant. And as Pastor said, that whole thing happened so that they could be reinforced. So those servants. So we can see these young men were probably reinforced by the interpretation of that dream, and therefore, when they were asked to worship another god, they just flat refused. Your confidence in your true king and his ability to deliver you is far greater than your fear of a human king and his ability to destroy you. So, verse 16, chapter 2, verse 16 to 18, can I get somebody to read that?
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up.
That was firm. That was pretty firm. You stop to think about it. Yeah. Do to us as you please. We're still not going to serve you. Yeah. The 3 men were brought before the king for questioning. They did not directly answer the king's question, but they refused to serve his gods and worship the golden image. No defense, no apology, no pleading. They knew that King Nebuchadnezzar had no ultimate power. Only God has that. But can you imagine yourself in the flesh and you're in court, and even if you did refuse to do what they asked you to do, would you kind of plead for your life? Oh, please don't throw me in there, You have to take me out dragging me by my feet. I'm not going. The Babylonian education had erased what they knew from the Hebrew scripture, that they serve a God that delivers his people, and it promised that the seed of the woman would crush the head of the seed of the serpent. That promise was still there, and they knew that promise, and they knew it hadn't been fulfilled yet. So, that's what they were focusing on, is that promise.
I've heard this story since childhood, but it just strikes me right now that they weren't the only 3 thrown who suffered. They were the only 3 who stood up and said, no, we're not going to. But they weren't the only 3 who were thrown in the fiery furnace, correct? Because earlier it said, and all who would not stand would
Yeah.
not fall down and bow. But those three stood up and made a point and stood up for
Right.
their guard and said, I won't do it. You know, they basically chose, if I die here, I die here.
Right, right.
But they also said, believe that the God they worship had the power
Mm-hmm.
that was greater than any fiery furnace that he
Yeah.
could come up with.
The
So I guess-
scripture doesn't make it clear, but if you think about it, you know, for them to come up with the fiery furnace as a punishment, it probably had been used as a punishment before.
So,
Maybe not for
that
this
particular
instance,
thing.
but I'm pretty sure the king had used these punishments before, you know, as ways to assert his power. And so, yeah, I wouldn't think that idea just came to him, oh, furnace of fire, let's build a furnace of fire. That furnace was already there, already built, so, yeah, I think that would have been done, and the Bible doesn't record that there were other Jewish people who refused, you know, but most likely there were people who had disobeyed the king. Actually, we'll see a case where the fire is used for somebody other than the Jewish people.
But you would probably imagine that there were other Jewish people there,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
and they bowed down. I mean,
Probably.
you know, so that made it even for the three to them. I mean, again, the pressure would be everybody else, even all my kindreds who are over here, they're bowing down. Let me go ahead and bend the knee, right?
Yeah.
But they were just like, yeah, we just can't do it. Even though someone else who we came from the same land, served the same God, they're bowing down. So their courage is even greater, you know, just because they did, because the pressure could have been, you know, I ain't trying to die up in here, you know, everybody else is, but, you know, that peer pressure, you know, let's just go along. And
Yeah.
they didn't, you know, so, yeah.
Cross your fingers.
Right. It don't mean that, right? It don't mean that.
They were convinced that God could be trusted, so they were bound and thrown into the furnace. And verse 24, it said, Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste. He declared to his counselors, Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire? They answered and said to the king, True, O king. He answered and said, But I see 4 men unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the appearance of the 4th is like son of the gods. That was a revelation, wasn't it? For somebody who what the son of the gods look like, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's something different about this one.
There's something different.
Yeah.
So in the midst of the fire, the king could see the 3 Hebrew boys in fellowship with Christ. Perhaps that's why he had to command them to come out. I never thought about that. You know, they talked about them unbound and, you know,
Right.
moving around in the
Moving
fire.
around,
If Christ was in there with them, they were probably fellowshipping with Christ. And probably wasn't that interested in coming out.
And nobody was going in there to get them.
But if you think about that, you have the opportunity to fellowship with Christ. I mean, you know, I mean, there are sometimes we get into church service and the spirit gets so high you don't want it to stop. You know, you want to, yeah, this is good. I want this to, you know, keep going.
That's true, yeah. Like transfiguration, yeah. They on the mountain, they saw, they were like, look, it's good for us to stay here. Let's build some tents.
They weren't delivered from the fire, they were delivered in the fire.
Yes.
When we say yes to God and no to the world, we might find ourselves in the midst of a fire. But we can be sure that in the midst of that fire, we can enjoy fellowship with Christ, that we would not trade anything for. And I think that's a good explanation of what I was trying to say earlier about when you're in the middle of suffering. If you can fellowship with Christ, even in the middle of suffering, you have joy. You know, it's kind of a miraculous thing. And the world has no explanation for it. You know, that's one of the things that really vex the world is when Christian people suffer and have joy. Chapter 6, verse 6 through 7. Can I get somebody to read that for me?
Then these presidents and satraps came by agreement to the king and said to him, O King Darius, live forever. all the presidents of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps, the counselors and the governors are agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an injunction that whoever makes petition to any god or man for 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions.
So we see as we move from the earlier chapters to this chapter, we are moving to a older Daniel. In fact, there's a new king at this point. It's King Darius. So in the reign of King Darius, Daniel had become an old man, and the straightness of his character constantly revealed the crookedness of his colleagues. You know, he kept messing up the curve. You know, they wanted to be graded by curve, and he kept blowing it. So they convinced the king to issue a decree making it illegal to petition any god except the king. Punishment was to be thrown into the lion den. So what were they anticipating would happen?
Kill him by law.
Yeah, get rid of Daniel. Get rid of Daniel. Get rid of Daniel. Yeah, because I think in their mind they knew Daniel was not going to stop praying.
Right.
You know, I think in their heart and mind they knew that was not going to happen.
Right.
So they were creating some way of you know, getting rid of Daniel. And I think about that all the time when, you know, you see people, especially news people, and they walking around asking questions and they stick a mic in a Christian face and say, "What do you think about homosexuality?"
Yeah, that's exactly.
And it's like, okay, I always say, if anybody asks me that, I'm gonna ask them, well, what do you expect me to say? I'll answer your question, but tell me what you expect me to say.
Right.
If you're a Christian, you're expected to say that homosexuality is sin.
Right. Yeah.
Why do you want to ask me that if you already know the answer? You know, it's a setup. And so that's what they were doing. They were setting Daniel up. Daniel heard about the ordinance, but he did what he always done. Go into his upper room, turn his face toward Jerusalem, get down on his knees and pray to God 3 times a day. Turn his face toward Jerusalem. Never forgetting that he was a citizen of Jerusalem. The next day, Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. Okay, let's look at, I've run out of time here. Let's look at, Daniel 6:20 and 22.
And when he came to the den, he cried out with a lamenting voice to Daniel. The king spoke, saying to Daniel, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God whom you serve continually been able to deliver you from the lions?" Then Daniel said to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, so that they have not hurt me, because I was found innocent before him, and also, O king, I have done no wrong before you."
And so we see here, if you look at the beginning, and if you look at the verses in between, this happened, and it was seemed to have been an overnight thing, because it was the next day when the king came. And if you notice, as he came near the den, he cried out. He was anxious to find out what happened. I think in his mind, he had an idea that Daniel might be saved. But it was interesting that he was anxious to find out what happened. Daniel enjoyed the protection in the presence of God in the den of lions that could have consumed him. Darius acknowledged the power of Daniel's God, confessing that he is the living God whose kingdom shall never be destroyed. After Daniel's release, his accusers were thrown into the den of lions and were consumed. And I mentioned earlier with the fire, the den of lions was a typical punishment, you know, and so instead of Daniel being punished, I guess he was punished, but that punishment didn't work. These other guys who accused him. And here's the deal. They were thrown into the den of fire, but they didn't lie on Daniel. They still prayed 3 times a day. You know, they got thrown in the fire for the scheme they pulled, and almost had the king condemn Daniel, which was, you know, a child of the true living God. When we shed the light of Christ on the book of Daniel, we see that there is another who was the citizen of one kingdom yet resided. The king of heaven, the New Jerusalem, was sent into exile in the Babylon of this world. Jesus knew who he was, what really lasts, and who to depend on. Hundreds of years later, when Jesus read from the book of Daniel about Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the huge golden image that was crushed by the stone, cut out by no man's hand, Jesus saw himself. He was describing himself. Jesus called himself the stone that the builders rejected, which has become the cornerstone. Everyone who falls on the stone will be broken to pieces, and when it falls on anyone, it will crush them. And it's interesting the terms that they use. When we think about the punishment, we think about the wrath of God. Sometimes the Bible describes that in different ways, and I know several times it talks about crushing. Crushing people. Some of the prophets talked about how when they were being attacked, how they were going to be annihilated, and the land was going to be destroyed, and there's not going to be nothing like, I think last week we saw where Isaiah had mentioned that the city would burn down, and then it would burn again. And so the total is what is describing here, and in this case they're describing it as crushing. I think what I'll do is just go to the last slide at this point. So you must know how the story will end. Daniel 7:13 and 14 read, I saw in the night vision, and behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like the Son of Man, and he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. He was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. So when we read that in light of what I know about Christ, it's amazing the prophecy that Daniel was given at that time, because it falls right in line with what Christ said, that he's been given all power, all given to him, as a result of the work that he did on the cross. And so we see this being backed up years and years before by the prophecies of Daniel. Daniel saw the king who was going to come into the world from heaven, one like a son of man. Throughout Jesus' ministry, he referred to himself as the Son of Man, but he looked less like a king and more like a servant. Even though the religious leaders knew what Daniel had written about a Son of Man, honor him as a king, they mocked him. Isn't that amazing, though? He's called himself Son of Man. Daniel said they're Son of Man, and they don't connect that. When Jesus was thrown into the den, God had to rescue him. He was consumed. Yet, as he promised, after 3 days he emerged triumphant with no smell of death lingering on him. Just like the Hebrew boys came out of the fire with no smell of burns and ashes and soot. You must know how the story is going to end. One day, a day when no one expects it, the kingdom of heaven will come down. And that's what we have to look forward to, even though sometimes it sounds frightening. We just have to have confidence and know that when it happens, that we're going to be ready. And if there's any hurt, it's going to be hurt for our family members and those that we love who weren't ready. So it kind of behooves us to live in front of them in such a way, and every try to encourage them to be safe. Because when this happens, that's the last chance.
Daniel was obviously a man of faith, but he had gotten to see his friends. He watched the miracles of his friends. If God doesn't want it to happen, it won't happen. So he went into the lion's den with a whole different. He's seen what God could do firsthand.
Yep.
For the save the faithful, and he was faithful. All he was doing was being faithful.
That's true. And it reminds us, the Bible says, it takes faith to please God. I mean, we have to trust in something that seems so abnormal to the world. And we have to have faith. That's right. And that's how we please God. If he had to show us everything ahead of time, he would probably get aggravated with us. I keep showing you this, and you still don't learn. Okay. All right, well, yes.
Because there's one thread of practicality that I see running throughout this passage is the fact that if you're living, let's say you move from one country to another country, first you're trying not to assimilate into the culture of that country, but how do you live as a citizen of the country from which you come from? Like, let's say Pastor Harris lives America and goes to Cameroon. How does he live like an American in Cameroon? He has to continue to be reminded of the American culture and truly forget it. I mean, you can forget how they dress, how they eat and all, but it doesn't seem to be very openly evident throughout the passage, throughout the book of Daniel, but it's implied in almost every circumstance that they truly were dedicated to study the law. I mean, when they entered, like the first incidents trying to convert them, trying to make them, you know, start eating the food, how did they know that they need to be faithful to the laws that God gave? They had to have been reading the laws, I mean, over and over, and I think that we can also get from that. The only way we can live as citizens of heaven on earth, we have to study the rules of heaven. We have to know our master. We have to know the true king. We cannot, there's no way we can live as faithful Christians if we don't really know the word.
And that's the message that we get over and over and over, because we don't think of it this way, but the thing that keep you from assimilating is to stay with the things that you know that are true. It says Daniel prayed 3 times every day. It was like a ritual. He did it. Okay. We know that those that studied the laws, they studied the laws. They read the scriptures daily. And so, if we kind of assume that, what good is reading the scriptures? I mean, it's easy to say that. You know, I know I'm saved, and I know how I'm supposed to live, and I read that scripture before. Why do I have to keep reading?
You can't stand it all.
But I said earlier, I'm sure some of you are like me. You can get comfortable.
Yes.
You know, you can get to the point where you just not reading it. You know, and your mind is not going to always recall at that moment when you need that scripture. You know, the world's going to challenge you, and when the world challenges you, and you're trying to think, oh, it's somewhere in John. You know? Now, I know that we all don't have that brilliant man who can say John 3rd chapter is this and this, but we all be able to kind of speak what it says, the intent of the scripture. I can't remember exactly what chapter and verses of things, but I know what it said. You know, now, if I had to have somebody go, I'd have to use my computer or something on my phone so I can search for it. You know, that's a weakness that I have. But, you know, you really have to know the word, and you really have to deliberately do things that are different from you, just, or else you'll get assimilated. I mean, you have to deliberately, every once in a while, even though you're traveling in that stream, every once in a while you got to step aside and do that thing that makes you different. You know, that prayer, that the reading that scripture, or you know, discipling, or you know, telling somebody about Christ. You know, just because nobody else in the room want to talk about Christ, you kind of have to always look for that opportunity. You know, somebody who might, you know, want to know about Christ, you look for those opportunities. Okay. I run over time. Yeah. My wife likes to likes me not to take up y'all, you know, precious time. She likes to honor your time, so she's kind of my help with that. So, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
We give her a bag of peanuts next week.